We know that dopamine is involved in motivation. Are the changes in expectation modifying motivation to either move forward, become more pessimistic, more optimistic, or stay neutral?
That's a great question. So expectations change. Those changes in expectation are encoded by positive and negative fluctuations in dopamine. Where does motivation come in? Todd Braver and John Cohen had an idea about that, and I think Matt Botvinnik too. And that is, those prediction errors are perfect signals for deciding how motivated you should be. How much should you want a thing by measuring across those kinds of signals. Mm-hmm. And if you were doing an experiment, you were trying to look at dopamine, depending on the time scale you looked at, you might see little changes in it that correlated with fluctuating expectations. And then you might see something as a kind of an envelope, a slower changing thing, which is the kind of experiment you might do in a experimental psychology setup. And that would look like it correlated with motivation, with all these little wandering things going on underneath. That's the sense in which it could do both functions.
We are told that dopamine is what we're seeking as we go through a social media environment, or we go through a dating environment, or we go through a financial environment that we're investing time in. But as you mentioned, dopamine is not just at the finish line. We've known this for a while now. It's part of the neural circuitry algorithm that's driving us forward or causing us to pause. But is it fair to say that any system, whether it's a social media platform or it's another form of business, whether they consciously realize it or not, and they probably do, it's built on trying to constantly update our expectations so that we keep playing the game, so that we stay in the foraging mode. Because if you think about it, it's an infinite scroll. There is no final outcome.
If there was a final outcome, you wouldn't keep living. You want that system to keep tracking, and once it gets to one place, you want it to have another place to which it could go. Otherwise, you wouldn't live. Probably one insight into why it's in every mobile creature's brain on the planet. So if any goal that you achieved, whatever it is, taking a drug, eating a food, getting a partner or whatnot, if that was enough for you right then, probably be a hard, that's not the way your nervous system works. Your nervous system keeps pushing you forward. That's what you're working for. You're working for this push forward drive. The mapping that onto dopamine hits is it's not wrong, it's just blunt. It's just a blunt way to say it. It's not wrong, but it is blunt. It's a blunt way to say it. You move around with expectations before you get any sort of big unexpected hit.
This is why I don't like the phrase or the words dopamine hits, because it implies it's like a reward that gets trickled into you.
But it is true, you get a hit. It is true that there's this unexpected reward that your expectations, your series of expectations, did not anticipate, and that augments. That is the learning rule. That's what we think the dopamine fluctuations are encoding. And so it does both jobs. It lets you update and learn, and it codes for the kind of motivation you should have. And when you're surprised, those are extra hits. So it's not wrong to say that. It's just incomplete.
I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit here, but speculate within the context of what you know about dopamine, which is a lot. Let's take any of the different examples that I threw out on the table for us, and we artificially ramp up levels of dopamine with, let's not say a drug of abuse like methamphetamine or something, but we throw a little bit of a dopaminergic stimulant into the picture. Does that just raise the kind of the height of the sawtooth? Does it change any of this? For instance, if this person who goes out on a date, on the second or third date, they go to something that, like maybe a show that's spectacularly good, okay? How does that change the dynamics when, it's now there's an association with this person or an event, but let's say that they're flooded with dopamine. Let's take a drug out of the picture. The experience generated more dopamine. Does it shape their expectation and motivation around that person?
If you raise expectations, and these are coded by changes in dopamine, then in fact that's sort of a tonic question. That's sort of a tonic phasic
Can you explain
question.
tonic? Most people are going to think gin
I
and
will.
tonic.
So slower changing. Okay. So I see a show. It makes me very excited. The well fills up with a little more water. Okay, and it's sitting here. So now the little hits are on top of that. Or I see something that depletes it. I take a drug, and some drugs deplete dopamine.
Or they went to a play and it sucked.
Yeah. It's disappointing, or it's sad.
He's got bad taste.
Yeah. And it just runs in your mind. And so that can lower the levels, and that changes the way in which the fluctuations have an impact on learning. Okay. Parkinson's disease is a condition where by the time you show up with symptoms in the doctor's office, you've lost 70 to 75% of your dopamine neurons in your brainstem. Those are the only source of dopamine in your brain, except for a tiny pathway in your hypothalamus and pituitary axis. Well, there's
the retinal biologist in me. They're doing things totally unrelated to any of this. They're controlling adaptation at light levels.
Yeah, light level adaptations, and certainly in goldfish. Those are actually very interesting. I won't talk about them.
So you had the dopaminergic brainstem neurons that degenerate in
by the time you're feeling so stiff, you're starting to have tremors, all the Parkinson, the flat facey, flat affect, and somebody gets you to a doctor, you're in the 70 to 75% loss. Okay. So what does that mean? Now all of a sudden these and dopamine neurons in your brainstem are maybe 80,000 neurons per side, 160,000 neurons. That's like nothing. They send dopamine delivering wires, biological wires, throughout your entire brain and down your spinal cord, making hundreds of millions of connections. But now you've shrunk those down. And so the one thing that happens is it's very noisy. There's not so many neurons to cope for. There's no smooth changes in it. And the noise floor relative to what you could generate as a signal gets really, really high. Well, one of the things that we think dopamine is involved in terms of information processing is valuing the world, computing, if you will, the value of taking this action or that action, the value of grabbing this and putting it in my mouth and drinking water, et cetera. Okay. And the Parkinson state is sort of like a flat value function. You can't really see differential value in things as you look around the world. You expect the system to fluctuate for you, to tell you if I were to do this stuff or if I were to do that stuff, if I were to look at that, et cetera. It gives you a fluctuation, but you can't read it. The downstream—
It's too noisy.
It's too noisy. You can't read it. The downstream system just has to act as it did before. It says, oh, everything's of equal value. Just stay put. So I've always thought about Parkinson's as an active freezing disease. The nervous system is doing exactly what it would do because it takes energy to transition from where you are to doing the next thing. Why do that if there's nothing more valuable there? This comes back to the idea of it pushing you through the world. It doesn't habituate because it has to keep your behavior going or else you're going to die.